Hello, gorgeous, and a warm welcome to Accepting. I'm Annie, your host, and we are back outside under the tree of love. This episode, I had really been thinking I was going to be sharing with you about all the beautiful happenings in France. And actually, it's transpired as the theme of this episode, continuing on from love over fear, is accepting life and death in our lives. So grab yourself a cup of tea, get yourself cozy, and let's dive in. Welcome to Accepting, where I guide you to accept all aspects of your beautiful self, embrace your truth, and live your life that way. Hello, gorgeous, and a warm welcome to this week's episode, Accepting Life and Death. Now, it took me a while to accept that this was going to be this week's title. I really thought before that I was going to be sharing everything that happened, all the beautiful synchronicities that happened to me with nature in France, and for it to be inspiring and beautiful and sharing the magic of it all. And I had a realization this morning, the whole series of love, choosing love over fear, has been building up to accepting the natural cycle in life of life and death. Since September, that's where I've been. My beautiful girl Cleo passed in September. And since then, I have been given signs everywhere of life and death. And what happened yesterday was the beautiful, beautiful little girl, Mushu, who I met when I was in France, and I shared with you the photographs of us in the vineyard together at sunset. She passed. And today, after going through the grief of her passing, being reminded of the grief of Cleo passing, being reminded of a beautiful boy that came to stay with me for a couple of weeks passing, it all really, really manifested, if you like, yesterday all the way through my body. And it was so important for me to feel that. It was an acceptance of life and death. Because before we can move on into our next project, before we can move on as our real authentic self, before we can move countries, move houses, etc., so forth, it's so important that we honor what is dying with gratitude, that we honor what has died, our old selves, and we leave blessings for that, because it can be so easy to just put a spider's still going up my arm. It can be so easy just to put our hands up and say, right, that's it, I'm off, out of here. And we don't close that cycle. So we've been talking about rising from the ashes of the phoenix. We've been talking about, burning what doesn't serve us anymore, etc., so forth, and then rising out of the ashes, as I said. What about honoring? What about being in a place of honoring? And what really occurred to me last night as I lit a candle for Mushu, as I was honoring, was that was a completion. That was a completion for me, because the last time I was in France, Mushu was with me pretty much every day after I was able to go for my first walk with my ankle. And she was there with me for the sunsets. And she very much reminded me of Cleo. And for those of you who don't know, Cleo was my beautiful feline guide, is my beautiful feline guide who loves me from the Rainbow Bridge. And all of the episodes since December have been honoring our guides who love us from the Rainbow Bridge. And through this series, a very beautiful friend of mine, her beautiful horse, came on to speak with us. He passed a few weeks later. The beautiful Mushu, who joined me in France, and she told me as I placed my hands on her, something didn't feel quite right. When I spoke to her caretaker said, well, actually, the vet said there's something going on inside and they want to help her pass. She's fine at the moment, so we're not doing that. when I got the news yesterday, my immediate go-to was, what could I have done? What have I done wrong? Instead of honouring that that was her time to pass, instead of honouring her free will, instead of honouring that she's been in this beautiful place, she was there for me when I was in France, when I was closing everything of my grief, if you like, with Cleo. She was there with me, and the last day, as I was leaving, she actually came into the house. Now, for many days, I've been leaving the gate open, trying to, invite her into the garden. She hadn't come in the garden. And she was there with me most sunsets. When I say she was there with me, she was there in her space, and we were sharing the vineyard space, and she was always delighted to see me, and then she would get back to her mousing. And, I was reminded she isn't Cleo. She hasn't spent 17 years with me. And obviously she has, absolutely. I'd love her to come into the garden and relax with me under this beautiful tree in France. And that's up to her. And the moment that I stopped pushing and forcing and really wishing that she would do that, she came in of her own accord. And it was the final day or the penultimate day. And I have been in the medicine wheel at sunrise. And it was absolutely beautiful. And then I felt to look round, and she was there in the vineyards. And usually she had been with me, as I said, in the sunsets. So for her to turn up in the morning with the sunrise was absolutely beautiful. And I was still in the experience, and the whole feeling of and there's another spider. The whole feeling of sharing with you what happened in France was for it to come out in a very beautiful, I guess, spiritual way. And actually it just happened in the most beautifully natural way. And nature, the main lesson from nature is accepting life and death. And when I was in France, the last time I was there, Cleo was with me. So I was doing lots of firsts. So I was being in a space without Cleo, because she would usually go with me. Wherever it was possible, she would go with me. And I had never been in that house without Cleo. And when I arrived, the same thing happened to me that I explained that happened yesterday, this convulsion that went through my body. I just allowed myself to be whatever I needed to be in that moment, to allow whatever needed to come up. And that was exactly what happened in my first few days in France. I couldn't really walk anywhere. My ankle was sore. It was cold. And my body finally released so much. And all I can say is it was grief. It was grief that had been pushed down and down and down because I didn't want to upset anybody. And one of my spiritual mentors, the incredible Christos T. Perry, him and Foster Perry are amazing. And they were on very kindly, just as everything changed in the world. And the theme was love over fear. I already felt it was going to be love over fear. And then the morning we were speaking, the skies changed. And it was beautiful just listening to them under the tree. And the theme of the following episodes has been choosing love over fear. And actually, I realized one of my main fears was using the word death, because how's that going to come across? And I didn't want to upset anybody. And it's so interesting. The whole theme since September of my life has been accepting life and death. And it finally had my little light bulb moment, if you like, today, because it was none of my business when Mushu decided to go. It was none of my business to try to send her healing and for her to get in touch with me. That was none of my business. And even though I felt this huge connection And the day I found out that she was passing, the day before, I'd been an emotional mess. That's the only way I can describe it. I had been in absolute convulsive tears. Now, bearing in mind, I'm going to be 50 years young this year, and I have been experiencing perimenopause, menopause. So, we can rationalize it. Oh, it's hormones, or it's this, or it's that. It was just my body needing to express in the best way that my body could express, without forcing anything, without pushing anything. And what it allowed, being in that space, my body is speaking to me. And she was saying, I need to release this, because for us to carry on, for us to move forward without Cleo, for us to move forward into the new, with the new beginnings, we have to honor and allow what no longer serves us to go. So what I really had to allow was my body to do exactly what she needed to do in France, when I got back to Spain, and yesterday. So this episode is probably going to weave a little bit in and out, so we'll see where we go. So I've just listened to the most incredible episode by Christos T. Perry as well, and I'll share it with you. And it reminded me, so many things reminded me, and he's the most incredible speaker, teacher, etc., so forth, as is Foster Perry. And I was reminded of allowing my body, working somatically with our body, because our body remembers everything. So when I arrived in France, and I didn't have any distractions, I wasn't needed for anything, or I didn't think I was needed for anything and put myself out there to be needed. My body had the space finally to go, right, okay, well, this is going to come up. This has got to come out. We cannot hold this in anymore, like a pressure cooker. Because as we know, the more we push down, the more it's going to burst up. And I've spoken about this so much before Cleo passed as well. So everything that I speak about, I either have the experience beforehand or afterwards. That seems to be what's happening at the moment. So the last episode was on beautiful Beltane evening. It was under this glorious tree. And I was just in the moment. And in that moment, it was all about allowing ourselves the space and the capacity, and accepting the in-between, accepting that in-between stage. And this is continuing on from accepting the in-between, because I believed that I would be in France and then that was it, closed. There was still more of that experience to continue. And I very much believe that my experience in France closed yesterday when I heard news of Mushu's passing. Now, Mushu they think she was about 12. When I spoke to her caretaker, they didn't know. So that to me says that she was beautifully found. She found them, as we know, cats choose us. And they were the most beautiful people. And I spoke to them properly on the last day, because Mushu had been speaking to me, because I was feeling things on her, and I was feeling, those augurs don't feel quite right. And I mentioned to her caretaker when I gave some food on the last day, and she told me that the vet had said, well, it was in French, so that I didn't, may have been a little bit lost in translation. What I understood, though, there was something inside that was twisted. The vet had wanted to help her pass. As Mushu was doing so well, her caretakers had said, no, we're not going to do that. So the message that I got yesterday, 2 weeks after leaving Mushu, was, I have some bad news. She became worse and worse, and we had to let her pass. And before I got the message, I was already upset and emotional. The day before, I was already upset and emotional. I'd woken up that morning feeling, okay, I feel better now. And then another wave of emotion came over me. So what I've learned from this is to really, really listen to my body, because whenever, as empaths, as sensitive souls, whenever we have a deep connection, our body feels that, our bodies feel that. And whatever we don't feel on the emotional level will come through our physical level. And something else happened on Sunday, and I wasn't going to share it. I am going to share it because it makes sense in terms of what I would like to feel into next is about accepting life and death and accepting other people's free will, other sentient beings' free will. Because what had happened on the Sunday was a very beautiful friend of mine who got in touch and had been speaking about, I'm not giving names, had been speaking about someone that we know very well, a member of their family who really wasn't very well. And I went into immediate, oh, well, perhaps this is their time to go, just myself. I didn't say that to them. And then I just went into this beautiful space. I didn't force it. It just happened really, really naturally. And I ended up just being in a beautiful space, going into a very gorgeous healing for myself and for that person, and sending, and I'm not going to say what I sent because it's personal. And then I had sent the message to my friend saying, I understand if you just need to be on your own. I'm on the end of the phone if you wish to talk. And as I went into this beautiful, relaxed alpha, and then theta, and then delta phase level, I sensed something, and I spoke to her soul, and I asked her, are you ready to go? And she said no. So I sent what was coming through to her, and then as I finished this, and it felt very beautiful, and I felt very peaceful, and that the palpitation had stopped about worrying about my friend, etc., so forth. I got myself into a very calm space. And when I came back, there was a missed call from my friend. So I called her back. And then as we were speaking, she just said, oh my gosh, they've just got in the shower. Now, and then she continued with various messages talking about miracles happening. Now, this was a real moment for me, and here we go, the elements are agreeing with me. This was a real moment for me because it wasn't what I did at all. It was what that person accepted. And when I found out the news about Mushu yesterday, my immediate go-to was, oh no, I didn't send her any healing. It's my fault she's died. And this, as empaths, as sensitive souls, we can go into savior mode. And it's something that I've spoken about so much before about savior mode. We just want everyone to be okay, so we can jump into things without allowing people to have their experience. This isn't a criticism. I'm just recognizing that what I've spoken about before has come up so viscerally for me. And so my immediate go-to was, when I had the message yesterday, was, well, it's my fault. She's gone. I should have arrived in France earlier, because then I could have put my hands on her again and helped her. I'm talking about Mushu, the beautiful cat. The practical side of it was her body couldn't cope anymore. The natural side of it is her body was ready to go. The spiritual side of it is that she had finished her experience and she was ready to go. And as I was lighting the candle for her last night and her caretakers, it was beautiful. It was peaceful. It was honoring. And then as I started recording today, it's just dawned on me that it's so important to honor what we're moving on from, to honor the death of our old selves, to honor the death of an experience, and to be grateful for what we have learned, to be grateful for where that experience got us to be grateful for whoever was in our lives when that relationship has finished, and to be grateful for all of those experiences. I mean, we've spoken about this before, is we wouldn't be where we are now if we hadn't experienced all of that. And oftentimes we can cut relationships, we can jump into new houses, jump to new countries, sort of running away. It's so important, and this has come up so strongly, that we just allow ourselves to take a moment and honor the experience that we've had, honor that those relationships, intimate, friends, family, whatever they may be, all of those situations have got us to here. And to honor who we were before, to honor where we may have had addictive tendencies. For example, I used to drink a lot of alcohol. And it was very much, alcohol was a part of my life. And so when it just happened very naturally, in 2019, I started not really being that bothered about drinking anymore. And then in 2020, this thing kept coming up, 1 year, no beer. And it kept coming up. I was like, yeah, I can do that. And it was very interesting because, you know, we have Christmas celebrations, then there's a birthday, and there's a family birthday in January. I was feeling, oh no, well, how am I going to do that? Because they're going to ask me if I want a glass of wine, etc., so forth. And it happened. And I said, no, thank you. And my family got used to me not drinking because I was getting used to it, because I was saying, no, thank you. And it's honoring that whatever experiences I went through before, that I used alcohol as a numbing tool, that I used alcohol as a crutch, if you like, that I used alcohol to calm my Gemini moon mind and my Aquarius rising. And all of the experience that I'd had, whether I was inebriated or not, or hungover, whatever, and all the experience that I didn't remember, got me to where I am now, so I can share honestly, authentically, and help those who might be in a similar situation. Not necessarily alcohol. It may just be an unhelpful habit, you know, from your lives that you're releasing. And I'm really hoping with this sharing is ringing a few bells. And I spoke about this before, you know, when you resonate with something and the bell rings. So it is so important to honor where we have been and who we were, rather than just speeding ahead, because let's face it, we're in the year of the fire horse. A lot is speeding ahead. We're still honoring our rhythms and honoring, and this is absolutely for me, this is why I'm sharing it, because it's come up, is honoring who I was, is honoring those relationships that I had that weren't necessarily helpful for me in whatever space I was in, whatever person I was showing up for at that moment. That was the experience that I chose. You know, it's the old adage, it's some people are here for a lifetime, some for a season, some for a reason. It's that, you know? And it's the same with experiences, and it's the same with the experience that I had in France was an honoring. I shared with you before, a moth, pupa, arrived on the kitchen floor, and I helped her emerge into the world. I put some soil down and she emerged a few days later. It's just simply the cycles of life and death. Because as I had this convulsive wave of emotion through my body, and I was about to start a new process from my beautiful mentor, Christos T. Perry, there was a pupa on the floor. And I was reminded of when I was a child, you know, when you start getting memories, when our body's relaxing, memories start coming up, because I don't have a huge amount of childhood memories. because for whatever reason. And as my body's been relaxing, as my body's been releasing, somatically, and I've been allowing things just to go with the flow in France, that's what happened. So the hare greeted me one morning when I was looking out the window. I was downstairs and didn't come shooting past, just new beginnings. There was the hare. Hecate, thank you very much. Gorgeous. Then the moth arrived. Well, the moth pupa arrived. And oh my goddess, the way I was, the anxiety of making sure that this moth was alive, that no one was getting the moth, the whole story of it, because when she emerged overnight, and I'd put some soil there. My instinct when I saw her was to put her in soil. And then I started reading things and asking, AI, what am I supposed to do here? Rather than going with my intuition. And moths are all about intuition. And then I felt, no, I don't really want, this leaf isn't helping her, because the whole idea was for her to be on something soft and then to emerge that way. And naturally, as leaves that aren't on the trees anymore, they dry up and they curl up. And I didn't want to touch her and move her so much, or interrupt her, because she's in her metamorphosis. And I remember I messaged Christos and was like, oh my God, is that Aline? You've created your own initiation. So it was so interesting within these few days that I was feeling into, well, I'm not here for much longer. I'm only going to be here for another couple of weeks. And moths take 30 days, or moths take this amount of time to emerge. What am I going to do? So that was going on. What was also going on was, okay, well, I can't put the heat on, because what happens if that affects where she is? So there was no heating in the area that she was. And then the night that she started emerging, I thought somebody was in the house, because there was like this rocking sound. And it was the bowl that I'd placed her in with some beautiful soil from a gorgeous rose that my friend gave me, really beautiful, from the rose plant. So I was going through, it's like a mother, or it was just this anxiety of, I have to get this right. I have to make sure that she's okay. This is my responsibility, and almost savior mode, if you like. And so I was there with her. And when she emerged overnight, and I came out in the morning, and I went outside. So, what a beautiful day. And I opened the door wide and I went outside, greeted the sun, really beautiful, came back in. I thought, I'm going to just leave the door really open to get all that air in. And then something in me said, no, I'm not going to open the door really wide. I'm just going to leave it like this. And then something else in me was, go and check the moth pupa, because I'd left her alone, so she could do what she needed to do. And I looked, and it looked like it had all kind of shriveled up and dried. And I thought, oh no, what have I done wrong? And she'd emerged. It was the pupa where she'd come out of, and it was dry. So then it's like, where is she? And so I was looking everywhere. I was looking in the corners. I was looking absolutely everywhere. And then I'd also looked up what she could possibly be. And I had in my head that she was going to be a hawkeye moth. That's what I decided she was going to be. And when I eventually found her, she was behind the hinge of the door. So you can imagine where I went then. Oh no, I opened the door. Is she okay? What am I going to do? I can't move her because she's coming into her wings. What if I've just stopped her life after she came out? So then, after various conversations with AI, actually, I calmed myself down. She hadn't fallen down. She wasn't crushed. Or I still wasn't sure. I needed the proof that she was okay. And I didn't want to move her, so I left the door as it was so she could do what she needed to do. In fact, I'd closed the door. I didn't just leave it slightly open, I'd closed the door. I left her in her space, looked up what she was, had myself convinced she was a Hawkeye moth. Actually, she was an angle shades moth, and is an angle shades moth. I hope she still is. And so it was just such a lesson with her of just letting her be, using my intuition, letting her be. A member of my family even looked up spiritually what an angle shades moth was, and I didn't find this anywhere. And of course, when anybody finds something which is a message, we take what resonates and remove what doesn't, you know. So, and this really resonated. It was with the angle shades moth that it's to trust the process. Even if you can't see what's happening, trust the process. And with moths, with intuition, that's trusting the process. This was specifically that you might not see anything at the moment, allow it to happen. And this has been that since France, this has been the whole message. And I'm just realizing this now. So then what happened was she took her sweet time, which was wonderful. And she taught me that, you know, that was the in-between. She was not ready to fly out the door. She was not ready to move from that hinge. And she was quite happy there. So she started at the hinge of the door. There's a lot of door imagery here. She then moved up and she was on the window above the door. So I left the door open, ready for her just to fly out, and she didn't go. So the door was ajar, and then she moved down and she was on the latch of the door. So I couldn't actually lock the door. And then I thought, well, this is dangerous, because what happens if, you know, I'm in a moment and I close the door without thinking? So I got a branch underneath her very, very carefully, and she attached onto the branch, and then I took her to where she had emerged from and placed the branch down, the stick across, and let her hang upside down. Because usually what happens is when they emerge is they go onto a branch and they hang upside down to feel into their wings. And she was there for a couple of days, so that was brilliant. And then I could open the door and close the door and all the rest of it. So then I couldn't see her. Then she moved up to the top of the ceiling, and then I was worried that a spider would get her. So we went through all of this as well. So she's absolutely fine. You can't reach her. The ceiling's too tall for you to get up. You can't get up there with your ankle. She's going to be absolutely fine. And then she moved away from the top of the ceiling onto the window and didn't show any signs of going out. And all the time I was going through this, it was just a reminder that, you know, when we emerge and we've gone through our own metamorphosis, if you like, of whatever that may be, we need that space in between to settle into our wings, to settle into our real selves, if you like. So this was like the whole lesson going on. And then I couldn't find her. And then I did not know where she was. And I thought, well, I'm going to leave this house and lock the house. I'd really like her to experience the outside, you know, savior, control, etc., so forth. Couldn't find her. I hadn't seen any other moths. And then I was downstairs where I'd looked out the window and seen the hair. And I was actually gone into cleaning mode. I was hoovering, tidying, cleaning, clearing the space energetically and physically. And when I bent down to pick something up, there was an angle shades moth on the outside of the window. And I thought, oh, that's amazing. That's her. She's gone out the window. She's gone out the door and she's flown back round and she's come to say goodbye. How beautiful is that? And so I was very happy, carried on what I was doing. I was very delighted. She was very, very still. And I was thinking, well, I know they're still. That's okay. I know she can be still. And I was thinking, oh no, something got her. All of that happened again. So I was in that moment of how beautiful. She's flown out. She's come round to the other side of the house. I haven't seen any other angle shades moths. That's her. Anyway, later that day, another moth appeared in the kitchen, which was her. And she'd been hiding, basically. She'd been hiding all day and she was getting ready to go. So that night I left the door open for her and she flew. Off she went. And this was, as much as I would have loved to watch her fly and share that experience with you and be in that moment, it was a quiet, gentle moment. It was her own personal moment to leave. And that's where we are. When we're in the in-between and we're coming into, we've settled into our wings, we've honoured where we were, we've honoured who we were, we've honoured who was with us getting to that point rather than dashing forward and jumping into the next stage without closing the door properly, then I just realised the door, the door element. So when we're in that pupa stage, we're in that metamorphosis, we're in, the gooey stuff, and we've emerged, we've pushed through, then we emerge into this new space of being with these wings that we've never had before, even though that part of us has always been there. It takes that space, we really need that in-between time. It's so important to take that in-between time to just feel into that energy and feel into that space. And then the analogy with the door, it's so important that as we can now be that person, that sentient being who acknowledges that the past was there to get us to where we are, that we close that door with gentleness and with gratitude to whatever those experiences were, regardless of how painful they were, to get us to this point. And we are grateful to our old selves. We are grateful to who we were to get us to where we are now. It's so important, because if we reach into feeling who we authentically are now without whatever habits, without whomever was in our life that wasn't hugely helpful for us at that time, it's really important to honor who we were and to honor the death of that experience. That's over. Because if we're not honoring the death of that experience, we can take that experience forward with us to have with somebody else, to have in another place. So it's so important that we, rather than, as I mentioned before, we're rising out of the ashes. Yes, absolutely, we're rising out of the ashes. We close the door with gratitude on who we were. That's coming through very, very strongly. Yeah. So, my beautiful, I feel that wraps up the whole experience of choosing love over fear, because it's choosing that experiences, that situations will die. Nature shows us. All the seasons show us this. And this is what has been huge for me. My realization is that my beautiful girl passing has allowed me to finally release all of this trauma that I've been holding in my body from whatever's been happened to me before. The passing of the beautiful horse of my friend that also affected me deeply. The passing of the beautiful boy who came and stayed with me for 2 weeks because he was passing, another feline guide. And the passing of the most recent feline guide, the gorgeous Mushu. And I'm still, to be perfectly honest, in a little state of in-between, because I'm allowing the grief to be there. I'm allowing that there are certain elements of me who had been grieving the old me because I hadn't closed the door properly. I hadn't acknowledged that actually the old me and the old situations weren't all that bad. They were just getting me to this point. And as a recovering people pleaser, there can be this element. In fact, a family member said it a couple of times the other day, or there was a program on and they mentioned, oh, that person loves themselves, don't they? And I just said, good, wonderful, that's brilliant. If they actually do love themselves, bloody marvelous. You know, it's getting ourselves to that point of loving ourselves for exactly who we are. I nearly didn't record under the tree because my hair hasn't been dyed. I'm going to be 50. You know, there's elements that I had been feeling into because it's, if you like, it's the final. In fact, this episode is more like the final spreading my wings, if you like, the final almost of the gooey stuff to accept that death. And then now I can come out and settle in my wings. Because in France, I was still in the gooey stuff. I was absolutely being helped by nature as being shown in the beautiful hair, the partridges that arrived. I've got an ant here. Here's the fae. I was absolutely being guided and held in my in-between. And even though I thought the moth was showing me my in-between there, my in-between has continued. And today, as I'm recording this, I feel like I'm coming out of my chrysalis. I'm coming out of my pupa, whether I'm a moth or a butterfly. That's what I feel as I'm recording this. I'm having the realization of, actually, it's really important to honor who I was. It's really important to honor everyone, every sentient being that got me to where I am now. And Cleo's job was done. I even recorded a poem because I was told to go live, crying my eyes out, getting through this poem. And it was, you know, her words to me. It's time to move on, Mum. You know, my work is done. And because when she passed, there was this clinging on of not accepting that she'd gone. This is why everything since then has happened. I've been reminded of death everywhere. A couple of weeks later, the gorgeous, beautiful boy who I'd met when I first went into a ritual to connect with the jinn, this beautiful boy appeared outside my window, these gorgeous amber eyes gazing at me. And it was after Cleo passed that, and I've shared this before, I had a message, do you know who this cat is? And I did. And anyway, so then we went into the whole situation with the vets. He'd been poisoned and then he was okay. And I kept saying, he is not okay. He's really not okay. And I was being shown death. And what I was actually being shown was the beauty of death. Because when he was lying with me on his last day, I actually said to the caretakers and the vets, he can pass here. Because the most beautiful moment with Cleo was when I came back from the vets and I brought her back from the vet and I created an honor in her passing. I really wish to do the same for this little boy. And my lesson in that was, as much as I know that is what I imagine how he would like to pass, and just be gentle, because he'd show me the rainbow bridge when we were at 4 o'clock in the morning when I was sat with him in the bathroom. It was really important that I allowed his caretakers to have the experience of his death. Because if they hadn't have had the experience of his death, they wouldn't be able to close that. And that was huge for me. And as I'm speaking about this, it was as if, you know, I kept being shown, okay, we're going to show you something else so you can appreciate death. We'll show you something else so you can appreciate death. And throughout my years, birds have come to me, rabbits have come to me, sentient beings have come to me. Some have come to me to be put back, you know, back to where they were, back into the circle of life. naturally so they can live, and others have come to pass, and I've honoured them. And this is what has come so hugely as I record this episode. It is about honouring the death of experiences, honouring the death of who we were, so we can move forward into our authentic selves. So much love, my beautiful. Thank you so much for being with me in this experience. And please do get in touch with me if you wish to share anything. The next episodes are going to be feeling into something rather different. I do feel this closes love over fear, choosing love over fear really beautifully. And death actually is love. When we honour the death of someone, when we honour the death of something, that's love. That's choosing love over fear. And me choosing the episode, accepting life and death, I nearly said love and death, actually. Maybe it's love and death. Accepting life and death, I am going to allow that title to go out. Absolutely. So much love, my beautiful. And we will see you again under the tree of love. So much love to all your gorgeous feline, canine guides, all the sentient beings. Thank you to the Fae. Thank you to my incredible spiritual mentors on this plane and all planes. Oh. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Accepting. Please do stay tuned for future episodes and also subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If there's anything at all that you'd like me to cover in future episodes, please get in touch and let me know. You can also follow me on Instagram. And if you'd like to have any coaching at all, or you would like to discuss this, do book an expansion call. For now, I'm your host, Aline, and to your self-acceptance, gorgeous, with so much love.